Hey folks, got you on the overhead camera. Today I'm gonna reattach this strap. There's a little bit of finesse work to do with it, I guess you'd call it, but we're gonna get after that, and I'll show you a little more how I do that kind of thing, some of the things I look for, and basically how I do it. So stay tuned. Probably should have started this before I took the strap off, because that's kind of key when you're doing these kind of repairs. I look in here, I don't know if the camera will show it real well, it crossed over here from one side to the other, so there was a knot tied. Let me get a pointing thing. It crossed over, the threads crossed over here, and there was a knot tied right here. And you can just kind of tell by the way the leather is indented that there was a knot here. And this was pretty rough. There was a lot of thread broken on it, so it was really hard to tell. The threads were broken on this side. So it's really kind of hard to tell sometimes. So I'm going to start on this side, go down, and then I'll cross over, and I'll try to show you how I cross over, and then when I come back up here we'll do our over stitch and then tie it off right there. So I'm going to get after it now. I've got my thread. I wanted to get my thread to match as close as possible. It's really hard to match your threads just because you can't duplicate dirt, especially 80-year-old dirt. This is a 1941 P08 holster, which is for a Luger, and I'm going to get after this. I've kind of cleaned everything up so that it can go together. No dirt there. Dirt is the enemy of this kind of thread. It's, when you buy it, it's an unwaxed. This is the spool. This is just a linen thread, cotton thread, no nylon, none of that. If you burn it, it's gonna just burn. So I color it as close as I can get it. This is a bit of a black, kind of a grayish black, which seems to match the holster about as close as I can get. There's a certain point where you gotta say close is good enough. I don't like doing that, but I have to. On a total restitch, I won't color the thread at all. I just use leather dye to color it. But on a total restitch, I won't color it at all. I'll recondition the leather, and when I recondition that, I have some black dye mixed in with the Connolly's hide care, and that kind of tints it just a little bit, so that some of the really light spots will get a little color to them again, and it really makes it stand out nice. And the white thread, or linen color, I guess it's a natural colored thread, it's not really white. I know the lights are going to make it look white. It is not. It's kind of a cream color, but that's what I start with. And I have that spool. I have a couple of other spools that are different sizes for different jobs. This is the size that is generally used on these P08 holsters, and I've been doing it with this thread for years. A big spool lasts you quite a while. I have enough thread peeled off that I can get this all done in one shot. Make sure we start in the right spot. I'll go through the top hole here and the second hole on the holster. So the top hole of the strap, the second hole here, hope you can see that okay, and that'll allow me to overstitch that top, which is original. My apologies for the air conditioner. Probably don't need it today. It's really nice, been really nice the last couple days. So now to do this, we've got one hole above the strap. I'm just going to go in that way. I'm just going to use a saddle stitch because it's about as close as I'm going to be able to get. Most of this was done with machines originally, and it was done with a lock stitch, which I can do a lock stitch. Saddle stitch is just a little better in my mind, because if it breaks you can tie it off and still have integrity the rest of the way. Now I'm going to go back through that original hole that I went through first, just to bind that down. And these are an angled hole. So on the front, when I go through here, I want to make sure that my threads are not on top of each other, but kind of beside each other. And sometimes you'll just have to manipulate it a little bit. So I hope that'll show up. The threads are laying side by side. I see very few of these straps intact. So this is one of the rare cases where the strap is in very good condition. This whole holster was in really good shape. It had been repaired before. This stitching across the top was all redone. And the only reason I know that is this stitching here as well. It's a smaller diameter thread, and they didn't wax it. So the reason you wax it is just to make life a little easier as you're sewing, and it would have been waxed originally. For my wax, I use a piece of beeswax a friend of mine gave me many years ago that I've just had for a long time. He's no longer with us, so every time I use it, I think of him. I think of him other times too. Let's try to move the camera a little bit. Keep things just a little more in line. And I always start my stitches from the front. Alright, I'll get down here to the bottom and I'll show you how I do that crossover. Alright, I'm on the bottom hole here, and I have to it's got to go around twice and cross over to the other side. So I have to go in this hole first. Now I've seen these where it's crossed over on the back and between the strap and the lid. This one did not, it only crossed over and back, which makes things a little harder. Actually, I have to think a little more about it. Alright, so I have this. I have to go back in this hole. And you need to be really careful because now I've got my threads, but I've got to try to go through and not disturb them. So I don't know if you can see how I did that. Just came through there. And then there's a kind of inside and outside. I'm going to take the inside thread, or the outside thread, excuse me, go to the inside hole here. I'll take the inside thread from this side, go to the outside hole. So I crossed it over here. See how that crosses over? And then I've got a thread on the inside and outside. Real simple from there on. Take the outside one and it has to go through the next hole to cross over. This one has to cross over. And then the one, the outside thread, needs to go back through the inside hole. And now we're left with one on the inside, one on the outside. We're doubled here. My threads are nicely laying side by side. And I just got to go up now. Whoops. When I get to the top, I'll show you how we tie off. We're that far. I just did one back stitch because that's what I had before. And again, you want those threads to lay next to each other as opposed to on top of each other. It's just a matter of manipulating it a little bit. Rid of my needles. I don't need them to tie it off. So all we do is a simple square knot here because near as I could tell, you can't take a knot apart. It's pretty hard once it's, you know, 80 years old. In some cases a lot older than that. But the square knot seems to be what they used. Leave a little bit. I leave probably 1/8 of an inch. Not a lot, but a little bit. There you go. There's the inside knot, crossover, no crossover, oops, no crossover on the outside, just regular stitching. And all those stitches lay right back down in the grooves that were there originally, because when they pull the tension on there, machine stitching pulls a lot of tension on one side, it seems. It actually does it on both sides, but yeah, looking pretty good. I also had to do this top and part of the bottom here. If you wanted to do this entire bottom, you have to take this belt loop up, because that's also part of the stitching. I was in really good shape over here. I just needed to replace this bit of it. So I did that. Alrighty folks, that is how to reattach that strap. You just got to look at, you know, the indentations in the back here where your thread lays is going to tell you everything you need to know to reattach that and make it look original. So that's what I do. Sometimes you got to look a little harder than other times. I'll go ahead, well, we'll tap it down now. Just go on a hard surface. I'm over here on the granite top here. It just helps it to lay down a little better. On this holster, I also restitched the top. I was only going to do a few stitches on the ends, but as soon as I started pulling back a little bit so I could tie off the existing thread, it was just breaking, and I came back probably almost 3 inches, almost half the distance of the holster, and it just kept breaking. There was nothing I could do about it. No way to tie off thread when it's going to keep breaking. I could have overstitched the first hole. It doesn't look good, and it is definitely not going to solve the problem of the breaking thread. It would have just happened on the other, started from the other end and tore up. So I told my customer the same thing, and you know, with the thread breaking like that, it was just going to continue to break. I wasn't going to get a tie off. It was just easier and cheaper for him for me to just go ahead and stitch the top on. It was more economical. When I did the bottom here, since I only had to do from the belt loop over, that saved me a lot of time, because doing the whole thing gets really tough. As it is, when you're working down in here, you're inside the holster. I have a long pair of pliers that I use that's, you know, a long needle nose pliers, and that's how I get those stitches done. It's the only way I found to do it. I've tried other pliers, you know, this pliers is always on my bench, and it works great for just about everything, except that it's too far down in. You need to be able to get a hold of stuff. So that's what I do. One of these days I might show you some of the other tools that I use for repair work. But this is another one. 1941 P08 Luger holster. Another done. Y'all stay safe. God bless. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you're not already, or consider it at least. And hit that like button. It only takes a second, and it helps the channel out a lot. We'll catch you in the next video.